Good afternoon.
Hi,
Thank you
皆さん。
for inviting me. This is my first time in Japan, and I've
Hi,
got to
皆さん。
tour around a little bit this week and hope to do a lot more. So, a little bit about me. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Scrum.org, and you can see my details there. I've written a few books, and I put this picture up there for a reason, which I'll tell in a moment. So that is me in that picture after catching a baseball game. And the Japanese Atani broke my heart this week, as I am a New York Mets fan. So I use this picture to demonstrate, though, the importance of team and the importance of how a team works together and how management needs to enable that team to work. If I'm behind the plate catching and I have to wait for the owner to tell the manager to tell me what to do, we all lose. And in business, it's very similar. We need to empower the teams to work and make decisions on the work that they're doing. So let's move on with the presentation. Very briefly, who is Scrum.org? Scrum.org was founded by Ken Schwaber. Ken is the co-creator of Scrum, this thing we're here to talk about today. We've certified over 1 million people and taught more than 460,000 students all over the world. And we provide training, certification, ongoing learning resources as well. And our training courses are highly interactive and activity-based to help you learn while doing. And Scrum.org is a mission-based organization. We're focused on helping people and teams solve complex problems and doing that through greater agility, and that's what we'll talk about today. So times have changed. We've moved from a traditional industrial view of change where we had some unknown, we worked through that unknown, and then we started building based on what we knew at the time. The world we live in today is very different. We have a lot of unknown. Things are changing instantly. We couldn't have predicted things like COVID, for example, which changed how businesses had to run. So we need to be able to adapt to this change and constant change. Even our business, Scrum.org, prior to COVID, all of our training was done live and in person. We had to quickly change because we couldn't do that anymore and had to move the business model and make those changes to enable virtual training, yet still with a live instructor. So working in this new normal is not simple. Right? We're juggling a lot of things. We're making lots of changes, and we have to make decisions on where we're going to focus, how our teams are going to work. We're going to create an organization that's tied and driven towards success. In order to do this, we need to do a little, learn a little, do a little bit more, learn a little bit more, so that we're learning as we go. Because we can't predict the future, and we often, when doing work, we learn and things change. Traditionally, we would run projects, and those projects had an 18-month timeline, for example. And by the time we got to 18 months, things had changed. So we needed to, and I've worked on these projects where we think we know what we're going to deliver in 18 months, and then 16 months happen, and we're still 12 months away. And then another 9 months happen, and we're still 9 months away because things change and we weren't prepared for it. The reality is that strategy is complex. Strategies change as we learn. Teams are often built around skills and the applications that we have in place, but they're not often empowered to make the decisions that they need to make. And what we end up doing is just managing projects. We worry about outputs instead of value being delivered. We talk about things like velocity, but velocity doesn't matter if I'm not delivering the right thing. Now, risk isn't a bad thing to worry about, but it can't be the only thing. We need to focus on and drive toward innovation. Otherwise, we're not changing. Now, these things aren't all bad, but there's considerations that we have to make when we're making these decisions. And a lot of this led us to the Scrum framework. How many of you are familiar with Scrum? Ah, excellent. I don't need to spend too much time on what Scrum is. So, briefly, this is the Scrum framework. It's simple. Right? The Scrum guide is only 12 pages. It's a process framework that we then adopt and adapt to evolve to the ways that we're working. Scrum is built on empiricism and empirical process. We're constantly inspecting and adapting how we work and what we're working on to ensure that we're continually refreshing. This here is a sprint. A sprint is 30 days or less, and it's that time frame in which we deliver some value that allows us to keep learning and keep going. It starts with an idea, the product goal that lives in that product backlog. We get together as a team once every sprint to plan what's going to be in our sprint backlog and set our goal, our sprint goal for that particular sprint. Those people doing the work meet on a daily basis to discuss how they're going toward that product goal, or that sprint goal rather. And they're using that information to improve how they're working over time and looking at, do I need to change anything? Are we still able to achieve that goal? And so on. And at the end of the sprint, we review our work with our customers, with our users, and with our stakeholders to get feedback, to make sure that we're heading in the right direction and to improve where we're going so that when we plan that next sprint, we know we're in the right direction. And the Scrum team gets together and looks at how they're working in that sprint retrospective to ensure that we're always learning as a team, learning together as a team, improving how we work, making decisions about things that we've done and how we might be able to improve and do better, or things that we did that were a waste and maybe we don't do in the future. And then we start the next sprint over again. The problem is, those were just the mechanics that we talked about. If we don't change how we're working, if we're not thinking about empirical process, if we're not constantly getting that customer feedback, and we're just going through the motions, we're not going to improve. We're not going to deliver value to our customers and to our internal stakeholders. Dave West, who some of you may have met last year, when he was an analyst at Forrester Research, coined this term, water scrum fall, where we're really just going through those motions, but we're still doing waterfall type development. And what we're trying to do is drive that change from the mechanics of Scrum to really delivering that value in the end. And stop with some of the things that we see in many companies who just look at a big, long planning process and they just run Scrum to deliver that thing that they decided way back in the beginning. We look to stop and create those sprint goals so that those sprint goals are there so we know what we're focused on over these, say, 2 weeks, for example. Too often we see the daily Scrum as just a status meeting and not a way to look toward that sprint goal and help us improve as a team. Or we talk about one of the worst words I think we've ever had in the Agile world, which is velocity. I've written an article that's titled, "Don't Use Velocity as a Weapon." And too often I see that happen. Velocity is a predictor, but that's all it is. If I'm going to build a lot of garbage, a lot of the wrong thing very fast, did I really add any value? Scrum isn't about delivering more. It's about delivering the right thing and getting to the right thing faster, not delivering more faster. And what we focus on is professionalism. We focus on outcomes, not outputs. We focus on mindset changes in how we think and how we work. We focus on really working together as a community and as a team to deliver toward that common goal. Not the mechanics. The mechanics are fun, they're interesting, maybe, but that's not how we deliver better. We can do everything in the Scrum Guide, and if we don't change how we think and how we work, it's not going to help us improve. So it's a time to change, and it's a time that we need to change. We need to change our mindset. We need to align the organization and the structure of the organization with our products and the products that we're delivering. And we need to invest in those products in that portfolio and not just at a project level. And to do this, we need to start thinking about a product operating model and thinking about how do we build around the products that we have. That model might be unique from product to product because the skills we need will differ, the product's going to be different, and even the type of product might be different. It might be a software-based product. It might be hardware-based or some combination thereof. So moving from that project mindset to a product mindset, we're looking at outcomes versus outputs, flexibility versus a fixed decision that we've made very early on before we know everything. We're looking at delivering value versus time or scope or cost. We're looking at this product is permanent, or at least until it's ended its life cycle, unlike a project which has a start and an end date. And our teams are focused. They're people. They're working on what we need them to deliver to satisfy that product. They're not just resources who can be swapped in and out. We build teams and build teams together. I've seen very successful organizations where they assemble that team, and that team or set of teams owns the product, and they deliver and drive toward that product. In the latest version of the Scrum Guide released in 2020, it defines a product as a vehicle to deliver value. It has a clear boundary, known stakeholders, well-defined users or customers, and a product can be anything. Anything that we deliver as a business, anything that we deliver as an organization can be termed as that product. So what is a product operating model? I think we've talked a bit about that already. But that product operating model is a representation of how the organization's going to deliver value. It's wrapped around the product to help us deliver and deliver that value over time. It actually runs itself. Some of the key artifacts and the entire idea behind this is start to drive transparency. Be able to see and know what's going on. Understand what's happening within our team and teams so that we can understand where we're going and how we're going to get there. We have different aspects that drive toward that. Within the operating model, we have people and the organization itself. We have measures. We need to measure how we're doing. How are we working? We need to incent people to continue moving forward. We have to balance all of that, however, through transparency. Without transparency, if we don't know what's happening and don't know what's going on, we're not going to be able to deliver the right product. We're not going to get that feedback. And we need those agile processes to help me deliver. And this is very much a change from how many organizations work and think today. Our teams need to be supported and managed, but also self-managed and empowered to make decisions. Going back to that first slide, if the catcher has to wait for everybody else to tell them what to do, they'll never make the right decision, or any decision for that matter. We need to empower our teams to help us because they're closest to the problem. They're the ones solving the problem, and they need to be empowered to do so. And our managers, our leaders within the organization, and the teams themselves have to reinforce that. We need to have the policies in place to help support that. We need to have the incentives in place to support that. We need to build that trust. We need to have that safety that we're able to make decisions. And maybe we'll make the wrong decisions, but it's only for that sprint. And that's the whole idea behind Scrum. It's that sprint, it's that 14 days or those 30 days. Maybe we made a wrong decision, but we can self-correct every sprint. Unlike in a waterfall process, unlike that product I worked on when I was at Rational Software, where every 18 months we were 18 months away because everything was changing underneath us. And we need clear ownership. We need to know who owns that product, who's ultimately accountable for what we're delivering. It doesn't mean that they don't have inputs from lots of people, but somebody has to make the decision. Too often we try to make decisions by committee, and then we make a whole bunch of random decisions that send us in many different directions. So we need that ownership, that product ownership, to help bring those things together so we're making a single decision. And in the end, it needs to be evidence-based. I think over the last 4 or 5 years now, we've learned a lot about empiricism and testing things before we put them in the market, getting lots of data and lots of inputs to make decisions. Based on that information that we're constantly gathering, that evidence, based on testing our hypotheses and putting things out there, we can look at different measures. Too often we only look at one or two, like time to market. Time to market's important. If we can't get out quickly enough, then we may be beat by our competition, or everything may have changed. We need to look at our ability to innovate. Can we do it effectively? Can we do it quickly? Tying back into that time to market. But if we innovate and we can't get it out, we have a problem. If we get a whole lot out, but it's not innovative, now we're just stuck. And then we're looking at our current products and what value do they deliver today? And what are we missing? What's that unrealized value that we can go after? If I have a product that's doing very well with the current value, over time somebody will create something better. So how do I make sure that I'm looking at that unrealized value and I'm doing things to improve that product over time so that it doesn't get leapfrogged? Our strategy drives what we measure. What we measure drives what we do and how we work. So it's very important to have the right measures in place, because if I'm putting in and measuring the wrong measures, now I'm going to be doing the wrong things. I'm going to be incenting the wrong behaviors. If I'm measuring velocity, my teams are going to say everything is 30, no, that's not a right number, but 30 story points, right, instead of 3, just because now my velocity is higher. And if my teams know that's how I'm measuring them, that's what they're going to do. So we have to measure the right things. We have to talk about the right things. We have to incent on the right things if we want the right behaviors and we want the right products delivered to market. Right? Many of you raised your hand when I asked, do you know Scrum? And I would bet many of you would also raise your hands, and I'm not going to embarrass you and ask, if I asked how many of you your Scrum teams are measured on velocity and outputs instead of the value they're actually delivering to the business. And that's what we need to change. Those are the mindset things that we need to evolve. We need to move from mechanical Scrum, how do we do it, to that mindset of professional Scrum, the ways we're doing it, getting that input, getting that feedback, always changing and evolving our processes over time. It's easy to follow a process. It's also easy to blame a process, but it's very hard to change. It's very hard to change how we're working and what we're doing. We need to move from the bases and move up in our ability as a team. We need to move up in our product ownership and really driving product ownership and thinking about that product and the product that's being delivered. And yes, we need to master Scrum, and that's important, but just mastering Scrum alone is not going to get us there. We need to have all of these factors where we're aligning with our customers and outcomes, where our disciplines, our skills are there to deliver incrementally and iteratively and deliver the right thing to market that our customers and users need. So I pulled together a few case studies to just kind of look at and get an idea. This first one is a healthcare and pharmaceutical company. They're an online pharmacy that delivers medicines in market. Their products delivered to over 400,000 customers, but they had a problem. They weren't able to meet those customers' needs. They were mostly just doing bug fixes. They weren't actually delivering innovation. They weren't delivering new things into the market. And those features that were delivered took so long that they were losing their customers before they could even get the customer needs into market. And they weren't able to deliver on a predictable way or in a predictable way. They weren't able to deliver quickly when the customers need. It would take months just to deliver small little features and things that those customers needed, and they were losing their customers. So what did we discover when we started working with them? The things that we already talked about. Mechanical Scrum. They were doing all of the things on that picture. They were following the Scrum guide, but they didn't change how they were working. They weren't bringing in new processes and new things to help them deliver better. They weren't able to really execute on that. So what we did was we brought in different practices. Scrum is a framework from which process evolves. And we bring in different practices depending on the team to help that team do better. And you can see some of the results from some of these changes. They increased their customer satisfaction from a 2.1 to a 4.1 in about a year. They reduced the login problems from 2% to less than 1% in that same period of time because they started to listen to their customers and they started to implement things based on what their customers were doing. They also put things in their software to measure how customers were using it and get that feedback, not just by talking and asking, but by having real data, not just opinions to base it on. So this is a software company, kind of more traditional of what we think of with Scrum. This one's a little bit different. Gillette, the razor company. They make razors and other healthcare products. They're owned by Procter & Gamble. We have a great series of podcasts where the vice president of products talks with Dave West about what they did and the problems that they had. And what they were seeing is the market changing. How people look was changing. COVID had a big impact on this as well. People weren't shaving as often. People were growing beards. Different things were happening. And they weren't adapting quickly to meet those new customer needs. And other companies were coming in, stealing their customers away. And as this is a very different type of product, right, no software, they had different challenges than we often see. They were discovering issues very late in the process because they would build an entire razor and then test it. To build a razor, they need a whole bunch of manufacturing equipment. So they were buying all of these things up front. So that meant they would reduce their risk by meeting the needs of engineering before the needs of their customers. So what did they do? They moved from a spin up and spin down project type of program to really align the products around goals. What was their goal? What were they trying to deliver? They started getting stakeholders involved every sprint. So engineering was involved, manufacturing was involved, marketing was involved. They were all part of that Scrum team, and they were working together. They hired an external agile coach to help them with some of this. They also moved from a whole bunch of little backlogs to a single product backlog. They started to actually look at this as the razor is a product, instead of the blades being a product and the handle being a product and the marketing of it being a product. They brought it all together as a single product and a single product view. And maybe most importantly, they let the Scrum teams make decisions and define the processes that they needed. So some of the results that they saw, they evolved from a let's get everything done right now type of attitude and mentality to a let's think about longer views and really having that ownership of the product that they were delivering. They reduced their time to market. They delivered this product significantly faster than they ever delivered a product in the past, even though they didn't have everything defined up front because they didn't make all of the mistakes. They didn't have to rebuy. They didn't have to re-engineer. They only had to re-engineer the things that happened in a 30-day period instead of in a 6-year or a 6-month period. The ratings were up, and the people in teams also felt empowered in wanting to change. So the people that are doing the work, they're now the biggest champions of this new way of working within Gillette for other teams to start doing and other products. And here's a little secret in case you don't watch the podcasts and the videos. They did what worked for them. There weren't Scrum police in there saying, you're not doing it the exact way it's supposed to be done. What worked for them was a daily Scrum 3 days a week. Now, they understood why they were doing the daily Scrum, and that's what's important. So they adopted over time and adapted over time to change it till they figured out what worked best for them. And they built that process for what worked best for them to be able to deliver. Remember, they had people all over the world working on this product. They had different parts of the organization, marketing, engineering, sales, lots of other things as well, right, that do that. They also had suppliers that they had to depend on. So they did what worked for them. But the thing that they didn't change, the thing that they didn't ignore, is that iterative delivery, so that they're constantly learning. They are always do a little, learn a little, plan again. Do a little, learn a little, plan again. And then talk about it as a team to understand what works for them and what they need to change, what they need to evolve. So with that, are there any questions? Oh, actually, before I ask that question, Anyway, before I say that, something we're also going to announce today, we're going to be working over the coming months to translate the Professional Scrum Master, the Professional Scrum Master 1 and the Professional Scrum Product Owner 1 tests. So that makes it easier for you all to take those tests and get those certifications tied to the classes that we're delivering. We're also working with many folks here on becoming professional Scrum trainers within scrum.org to better help you and your organizations be successful. And now, were there any questions?
日本語で大丈夫です。
大丈夫です。
貴重なお話ありがとうございました。そうですね、アウトプットよりアウトカムが大事だっていうことで、本当にすごく事例もあってすごく分かりやすい内容だったなと思ってます。で、顧客満足度の測り方っていうところでもし何かアイデアがあればお伺いしたいなと思ってるんですけども、先ほどの、ヘルスケアの事例でも、顧客満足度を測ってあったり、あと先ほどのひげ剃りのジレットさんの事例でもユーザーが満足したっていう話があったかなと思うんですけども、どのプロダクトのどの会社のって話じゃないんですけども、ユーザーの満足度を定期的に測っていくことで、プロダクト何も変わってないのにユーザーが忖度してこう評価が上がってしまったみたいな話を聞いたことがあったりしまして、こうユーザーの満足度を定量的に測るのってすごく難しいなっていうことを日々感じてます。Amazon のレビューもしかり、レストランのレビューもしかり、スコア星5点で 3.4 です、こっちのお店は 3.6 でしたって言われても、じゃあ 3.6 の方が優れてるかっていうと必ずしもそんなことないなっていうふうに思ってます。なんかその顧客の満足度っていう測り方のところで何かアイデアがあればちょっとぜひお伺いしたいなと思いました。よろしくお願いします。
Thank you for the question. You need to measure multiple things, and you need to constantly measure and ask new people. One of the things that we do with our training, for example, we have Trustpilot we use where we survey people immediately after a class. We also survey people 6 months after they took a class, because immediately people get it very excited, right? They just came out of a class, they're all excited, then they go back to their jobs and they may or may not be as excited. So we asked them 6 months later, were you able to apply this? How quickly were you able to apply it? Give us a net promoter score, which is just one measure, but it's a measure and it's something we constantly look at. And we're asking new customers that. If you're thinking about software, you're building things in to measure that satisfaction. So are people going to the same thing multiple times? Are they able to find their way around your product, around your website? So you need to be able to ask questions of multiple people, and also ask it consistently in a consistent way, because Data is dangerous. And I can use data to tell the story I want to tell or tell the true story. And you have to be very careful when you're using data because you can manipulate it, and you don't want to manipulate that data to tell the happy story. You want it to tell the story that you're looking for. But you need to come up with measures for you that look at what that previous slide showed of what is my unrealized value, what is my time to market, what is my realized value, and look at all of those different types of measures, customer satisfaction being one of them. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you for being so welcoming. And I'll be around all day if there's any other questions. Thank you.